Welcome to the Depth Dive. This is where we take your sources, all that research and reading, and really dig in to find the core insights. Our mission, as always, is to get you properly informed, maybe find those surprising bits, and hopefully keep it mysteries along the way. So today, we're diving into, well, it's a really fascinating case study, health innovation. Specifically, a treatment that's making some waves in elite sports. It's kind of a rags to riches potential story for an athlete, but with a really unexpected turn in his recovery.
Yeah, and this deep dive, it really throws a spotlight on how parts of the body you might think are totally separate can actually be profoundly connected.
hmm
It definitely challenges some standard ways of thinking, offers a bit of a fresh look at patient care, recovery. I think you'll find it pretty compelling.
Okay, let's get right into it. Our main character here is a young college tennis player. He's got just this 1 year left, in college, and the dream is big. Turn pro. And it really would be a climb considering his family background. His dad works for Canada Post, his mother's a technician at Joe General Hospital, solid working family. So going pro from there, that's a big deal. But then, bam, a major setback. He develops medial epicondylitis on his dominant side, his left side. That's often called golfer's elbow, right? It's that inflammation inside the elbow. Really painful, common with repetitive movements like in tennis.
Yeah, exactly. And it was bad enough that it forced him to actually drop out of a tournament.
And he'd even tried to get treatment beforehand, seen a physiotherapist, apparently recommended by the father of a Canadian tennis player friend, someone he knew quite well.
That really highlights the pressure he was under. Professional dreams, kind of hanging in the balance, family hopes. He just couldn't afford to be sidelined for long. And it brings up a really key question, doesn't it? When the usual stuff, like physio, doesn't quite fix the problem.
Yeah.
Well, what else is there? Where do you turn?
That is the question, because often you might just try, I don't know, another physio, maybe more rest, or start thinking about like injections or something further down the line. But this is where the story takes that interesting turn I mentioned. The practitioner he saw next. They didn't just jump to treating the elbow. No, they did this
Right.
really thorough head to toe evaluation first.
And this is absolutely crucial
Yeah.
because what did that evaluation find? Well, yeah, he had the left elbow pain. That was the main complaint. But the exam also showed significant tenderness in his neck, his cervical spine, and impaired coordination responses, not just weak muscles, but issues with how his nervous system was controlling things. Both upper and lower body coordination were affected. That discovery was, well, it was fundamental for what came next.
Okay, so knowing that, did they then go, right, let's treat the neck and the elbow?
Not quite. And this is the really surprising part, the twist.
The practitioner decided the core treatment needed to focus purely on the C1 vertebra.
That's the atlas, right? Very first bone in your neck sitting right under the skull.
Yeah, a really critical spot. It supports the head, connects to the brainstem, affects the whole nervous system, really.
Exactly. And here's the thing. During the C1 treatment, the practitioner did not touch the patient's elbow at all. Zero direct work on the site of pain.
Wow. Okay. And how did they do this C1 treatment? What was involved?
They use something called the sonic system.
Yeah.
From what the sources suggest, it seems to be a non-invasive technology. It delivers very precise, sort of subtle adjustments specifically to that C1 vertebra. The aim is to restore the alignment and hopefully improve that neurological function.
And the results? You said they were unexpected.
Unexpectedly fast and dramatic. Immediately after the C1 treatment, they retested his coordination.
And get this. The practitioner literally stood on the patient's shoulders and legs, like their full body weight. And the patient, post-treatment, could actually resist that weight. He showed this really strong, stable coordination response.
Yeah, it's described as a very visible, quite powerful improvement right away.
Wow, that's a pretty vivid demonstration, isn't it?
Yeah.
What does that kind of immediate shift in coordination tell you?
Well, it's pretty remarkable. What's so striking is you see these immediate measurable improvements in different areas,
Yeah.
including areas related to the main problem, the elbow pain. Even though that wasn't directly treated, it strongly suggests, a really intelligent, targeted approach that may be addressing something foundational, like the C1, can trigger these broader systemic benefits.
Okay, so it worked incredibly well for this tennis player, at least initially. But is this sonic system, this approach, just a one-off success, or is it being used elsewhere?
Well, our sources do mention it's also being used by a doctor in Montreal, a well-respected one who runs several pain clinics.
Oh, interesting. How did he get involved with it?
Apparently, he first heard about Sonic from a childhood friend. But what really got his attention, what piqued his interest, was when he sent his own father to be treated with it. and his father is described as a renowned scientist.
His own father. Okay, that's a serious test case. What was the issue?
The father had developed this debilitating back pain, described as subacute.
And the result?
Quite dramatic, it seems. Within less than 24 hours of the treatment, the father showed significant improvement. He was back on his feet.
Less than 24 hours. Wow.
Yeah. And that fantastic outcome, seeing it firsthand with his own father, convinced the doctor. He decided to adopt the sonic treatment for his patients in his pain clinics.
That's quite an endorsement story.
It is. And if you connect the dots,
Yeah.
right, you have these prominent figures, like the doctor witnessing his scientist father's recovery. You combine that with the precision of the C1 treatment itself, the detailed evaluation beforehand, these immediate observable results like the coordination test. It paints a picture of something quite methodical, quite practical.
And the fact that the tennis player's elbow pain got better without being directly touched.
Exactly. That points again to that potential systemic effect originating from the C1 adjustment.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising, but what about the hard science? Safety data, formal studies.
Right. And we need to be really clear here, based only on the sources provided for this deep dive. There aren't explicit details on specific published scientific studies or formal safety trials for the sonic system itself.
Okay, that's important context.
It is. But it's also not unusual for formal studies on newer treatments to lag behind clinical application sometimes.
True. But even without those formal studies in our sources, we do see some strong positive signs, right?
Absolutely. You have the immediate improvements we talked about, coordination, pain reduction in multiple places, that's significant observable data.
And crucially, there were no reported adverse effects mentioned from the treatment described for the tennis player.
No, nothing negative reported. Plus, the patient himself and his family were clearly impressed enough to want more treatment. That continued engagement speaks volumes.
It suggests a positive experience and, at least a perceived effectiveness on their part.
And the process itself, that methodical evaluation, the targeted treatment based on physical responses like coordination, that does align with a professional sort of evidence-informed clinical approach.
Mm-hmm.
It really raises an interesting question, though, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How do we properly evaluate new treatments when maybe the big formal studies are still down the road, but you're seeing these compelling, consistent results in practice, observable results?
Yeah, that's a tricky balance. So what's next for our tennis player then?
Well, he was very impressed, as we
Yeah.
said. And his own report was positive, too. Less neck pain. The elbow felt less sensitive. He described it as quite an improvement.
Good.
So good, in fact, that he's already scheduled for another C1 treatment this coming Monday.
Ah, okay. So he's continuing with it.
Yes. And there's mention that maybe at that next session, they might consider addressing the elbow more directly, too, now that the systemic groundwork has been laid with the C1.
Right, building on the progress, that ongoing commitment, plus the results he's already seen, it really does suggest this could be potentially transformative for him.
It seems promising, based on this case.
So taking a step back, what's the big takeaway here for you, our listener? I think this deep dive is a powerful reminder, really, that the body isn't just a collection of separate parts. It's this incredibly complex, interconnected system. And sometimes, maybe often, the answer to a problem in one spot, well, it might be found somewhere else entirely, far from where the pain actually is.
Exactly. It really encourages, I think, critical thinking about health issues.
Yeah.
This case shows the value of looking deeper, doing a really comprehensive evaluation, considering those systemic influences instead of just chasing the symptom, It suggests that really targeted strategy, even if it seems unrelated at first glance, might get to the root cause and yield pretty significant results that maybe other approaches miss.
So here's something to mull over. Given this story, how might you think differently about maybe some common aches or pains, either your own or someone you know? Could there be something deeper, an underlying interconnected cause that maybe the standard approach isn't catching? What other questions does this raise for you about your own health journey? Something to think about.